But we are proud to be an official 2025 Bookend event as part of the Brooklyn Book Festival, now celebrating its 20th anniversary. Bookend events in person and in all 5 boroughs and online run for September 14th. It began yesterday through the 22nd and are a vital part of the Brooklyn Book Festival's mission to present programming that is hip, smart, diverse, and inclusive for New York City and beyond. We hope you can join us the entire weekend in downtown Brooklyn and the Brooklyn Book Festival's Children's Day on Saturday from 10 to 4 p.m. and Festivals Day and Literary Marketplace is on Sunday from 10 to 6 p.m. All events are free, and you can pick up the festival guide via brooklynbookfestival.org for more info. I want to give a warm welcome and to our panelists today, Adriana Herrera, Natalie Caña, Lydia San Andres, and Ambar Córdova. These brilliant storytellers are reshaping what romance looks like through a Latinx lens, centering love that is tender, complex, rooted in culture, and unapologetically ours. We're honored to be in conversation with them tonight for Amor Sin Fronteras, an official Brooklyn Book Festival event hosted by the Dominican Writers Association. I am Angie, the executive director of Dominican Writers. So, a few house rules for all of you that are here. We are welcoming you to this event, and we ask that you keep your cameras off and remain muted so that we can spotlight the panelists during this conversation. Tonight's event is also streaming live on our YouTube channel, which I will include in the chat for those of you who may wish to leave the Zoom and just view it through our YouTube channel. Okay, so I'm going to read brief bios of these ladies in case you don't know, because we're here to put some respect on their name and this genre. Okay, so here we have Adriana Herrera. Raise your hand, Adriana, for those who may not know who you are. Get to know Adriana. She is a USA Today best-selling and Audi-winning author. Adriana was born and raised in the Caribbean, and for the last 15 years has let her job and her spouse take her all over the world. She loves writing stories about people who look and sound like her people, getting unapologetic happy endings. The New York Times once called her book sweet, thoughtful, and delightfully filthy, too. When she's not dreaming up love stories, planning logistically complex vacation with her family, or hunting for discount Broadway tickets, she's a trauma therapist in New York City, working with survivors of domestic violence and sexual violence. Natalie Caña. Say hi, Natalie. Natalie has been many things: a teacher of fun size to king size humans, a seriously unqualified softball coach, a scaredy cat Halloween store manager, and Emmy Award winning public television producer, and more. The one thing she's always been since she first picked up a pencil is a writer. She loves to incorporate her "you'll never believe what just happened" to me personal experiences, enthusiasm for telenovela tomfoolery, and love for her Latina culture into creating diverse, saucy stories with shenanigans and sabor. Her debut series, Vega Family Love Stories, is available now. Lydia San Andres, straight from DR. Say hi, Lydia. Lydia lives and writes in the tropics, where she can be found reading, sipping coffee, and making excuses to stay out of the sun. As much as she enjoys air conditioning, she can sometimes be lured outside with the promise of cookies and picnics. Ambar Córdova is a romance author of heartfelt multicultural stories with a focus on raw emotional storytelling. She creates relatable worlds with flawed characters that feel real. She grew up in the Dominican Republic and brings the diversity as an inspiration to her stories. Amber writes books that readers not only escape into, but also find themselves in. Her debut series, Baker Oats, features a cozy small town in Florida, showing multicultural stories that bring butterflies and sometimes tears to her readers. When Amber's not writing, she's teaching, spending time with her family, and reading. And she enjoys boat rides, traveling, and spending time outside. Her latest release, The Lies Always Told, is a secret relationship, multicultural, and small town romance with mental health, chronic illness, and disability representation. Did we all get that? Yeah? Okay. So, ladies, I have like 15 questions here, and I had to choose like my top ones because, of course, I can't ask you all the questions. Okay. So let's start with origins and motivation, right? What inspired each of you to write romance stories centered on Dominican and Latinx characters? And how has your personal experience shaped the love stories you tell, especially around identity, migration, family, and culture? Who wants to go first? Because you do this job brilliantly.
Well, I'll go first. I have to give credit where credit's due. If it were not for Adriana, for Alexis, for Mia, for all these other people, I don't think I would have been brave enough to come forward and say, you know what, I'm telling Latinx stories about Latinx heroes and heroines, and that's just what we're gonna have to do. Because if for a long time it did feel like there was no space for us, that if we wanted to make money or if we wanted people to read our books, we did have to feature people who were not our people celebrating our culture. So I always have to, give it up to the people who were in the trenches doing the work before I even got there.
Thank you. Thank you, Natalie. Anyone else? Amber, you have a unique story. Go ahead. Maybe you don't think it's unique, but for many of us, it is.
I didn't think it was, but hey, I'll talk. So I actually never um and my internet is telling me it's unstable. I might for a second, but I never I never thought about writing. I created like things for my classroom and for my and like songs and stuff like that but I never thought about writing in general. And I actually didn't even read romance until like COVID. And then a town a book swap thing. And the one I swapped was a romance. And I have like to cry and I like stories that put me outside of the romance genre, then you don't have a happy end necessarily. And I read this, had the characters go through things eventually to it felt explore like these things in the books. And I read read mostly from the library, easily shelves. I research and stuff. Instagram started happening and I started seeing how many stories of people like are out there. And I mentioned something, I've never seen a story of a Dominican Latin living in a small town, a white man, and my husband, she's just right. I was like, yeah, right. Like that's how life goes. And I found one thing that I didn't know I was missing in writing and telling of relationships like my relationship that is pretty diverse. Um Diversity, so it has really easy for me to like bring all of those things into the books, but I am indie published, so I write it and I can publish it without a lot of the struggles that maybe to query and tradition may come, but then same thing happens with the so getting to read the diversity struggle, but I absolutely and it's like the dream I had until I started that first book, and now I cannot imagine my life. That's why.
Thank you. I know you were cutting off a bit, Amber, but for those who didn't hear her, because I had Amber in our book club a few, like a few weeks ago, and I asked her all these questions. Amber didn't see relationships like her own, in the books that she was reading. So her husband said to her, "Why don't you write it?" Right? And she doesn't have that long. She started reading romance during COVID, so it hasn't been that long. She also doesn't have that long publishing. I think she has 2 to 3 years since she started publishing her own stories. And if you don't follow her on social media, then you have no idea how great of a job Amber does with promoting and marketing her books. So please follow her on social media if you get a chance. Okay. Lydia, what about you? You're still on the island, so you're connected all the time, all right?
Well, I started writing 10 years ago. I just celebrated my 10th anniversary and I can't even believe it. And at the time, I was working as a historical researcher and I was loving my job so much that I would go to the archives in my spare time and I would just keep doing it. And I was uncovering so many things about specifically Dominican history that I thought were so fascinating. And I was like, somebody needs to write about this. Somebody needs to do something about this. And I thought, well, you know what? I'll just write something, but nobody's ever going to read it. But you know what? Just for fun, I'm going to see what it's like. And 10 years later, and so many books later, here we are. I had such an incredible experience sort of delving into Dominican history and putting that in, not just putting that into my books, but putting characters into my books who were living through these just incredible times, because you know that the history of the island has been a little rocky at times. There's been some political instability or like economic instability, but through all of it, people were finding love and they were finding joy and they were finding happiness. And I really, really, really wanted to show that.
Yes, I have to say that when I was like trying to get published back then, 2017, 2016, it was still not like people still wanted that trad deal. And it was very hard to do that. Lydia was one of the few, only, I want to say, Dominican author that was like writing romance that was already like publishing at the time. So Lydia is been here for a long time, and
La pionera.
and she writes fantastic historical romance.
So you open the doors for these ladies, Lydia.
Yes,
you make it a little bit
Can you see my gray hairs?
Yeah, no, she is. But I think just like what everybody's saying, I grew up in the Dominican Republic. I didn't move to the US until I was 23 after college. So I grew up in the DR. Even though now I've been in this outside of the DR as long as I lived in the DR, which still feels really weird. But like it never occurred to me not to write Dominican characters. Like it wasn't anything that I was like when I sat down and said I want to try to write a romance novel, and I've been a romance reader my entire life. Like I have been reading romance since middle school, and I'm in my late 40s. So romance is the longest relationship in my life, probably other than my relatives. And it didn't occur to me not to write Dominican characters. Like I just had to write people from the Caribbean, and the themes that I write are very aligned with like my own life experience. I write a lot about immigrants. Write a lot about people going into a new place and finding their community. I write about being queer and Latino and specifically like a Black Latina people. So yeah, like I think to me the mission is to be in this space to write us. Because otherwise there's a million other people writing white people doing white people things.
Thank you for sharing. I love the fact that you've all inspired each other. That is amazing. And again, it's because there's so few of you, right? So when you start doing your research, you realize, oh my God, there's not that many of us out there. Let me support, the ones that are out and, you know, see what we can come up with, right? So my next question for you all is, many of your books include deep cultural, historical, like Lydia and Adriana, or familial context, right? How do you balance the heat and escapism of romance with realism and social issues? How do you approach writing characters who carry weight of trauma, diaspora, or generational expectation, but still allow romance to feel hopeful? because I'm the hopeless romantic. So who wants to go first?
I just talked, but I guess I'll start because no one's
Go
going
ahead.
over.
We need to listen to you, Adriana. Go ahead.
I think, I think everything in life is point of view and gaze. Like, I think if you are a person, a woman, a Black Afro-Caribbean woman living in this country at any given point, you have to think of those things. Like, you walk in a body that is at the intersections of a lot of things. So, like, point of view, like how we view worldview is what makes things special. I think, um, you know, romance is genre, so it's like kind of like the reader already has the expectation of what they know what they're getting. Like if you're reading a historical romance that's a marriage of convenience and you're a romance reader, you know what you're getting, but what the difference is the worldview and the point of view and the gaze of the person that's going into the story. And my gaze is a gaze that comes from understanding that like Europe and the United States is not the center of the world. So when I went to write a historical romance set in Paris in 1889, I came into it with the strong sense that I grew up in Santo Domingo, which was, the first city of the Americas. And
Okay,
that like before there were cities in the United States, Santo Domingo was already a city.
that's
And
right.
so I have a strong sense of the fact that we have been people doing things that people do for a much longer time than I think you you have the understanding of it, because what fiction serves you is a lot of like a singular story, right? So I think what makes that part easy, I think, is because it's just in the water. It's just like our lives that we're kind of just like we just kind of are able to integrate that stuff, and like the sexy parts and the happy ending, that's like why we're writing romance, because the idea is that, one of the great superpowers of romance is that you can read stories about people that have a different background, about perhaps traumatic things or not, or whatever, and you know that you're going to have a happy ending. And so you can go into the book safely knowing that no matter what happens between page one and the end, everything's going to be okay. And so you can do a lot more with those stories than people, and we do a lot more. A lot of romance authors are doing a lot of complex, really interesting, really thoughtful writing because you can read some people having some amazing sex, steamy, happy, and also learn a few things about history or a particular type of experience or sexual identity or desire or gender expression, what have you.
Thank you so much. What about you, Natalie?
You saw me nodding along. Is that why? Uh, no, I agree. I think, we live this life, right? We know that no matter what story that we're writing about ourselves, we're not going to just be writing it as an escape, right? Because we know that in our real lives, we don't get that escape either. It's all about taking the things that are directed at us, that are given to us, that are put on our shoulders, but also walking with those, but also walking with hope and happiness, and knowing that we don't have to bog ourselves down with all these other expectations of what people want. So I think when we talk about writing our culture into our stories, it's kind of like it's a natural thing, because that's what we live, that's what we breathe, that's what we do all the time. I think it would be more difficult to not write our culture into our stories.
Thank you. What about you, Lydia?
No, yeah, for sure. I don't think I would know how to write otherwise, because it is our lived experience, and especially writing books that are set in the Dominican Republic and living here, it's so much of a part of my daily life that I'm like, to be honest, sometimes I get out my frustrations a little bit with my writing. But it is such a huge part of my everyday that it just comes out onto the page. And balancing it is something that we as people have to do. We have to go through our really tough moments, really difficult situations in our family lives, in our living as people in society lives. But we still find space for romance and family and joy.
Thank you. And Amber?
I think same as the other ones too. My internet is breaking again. I'm sorry.
No, you sound better now. You're not
Okay,
breaking up.
good. But also I think that I also deserve a happy ending. And why wouldn't I be writing it into books, regardless of whatever? And that's why I write so much of that chronic illness and the mental health component too, because we need to know that no matter what the expectations are for people like us anywhere, really, because sometimes the expectations come very harshly from our own parents and from our own community and from our own, friends, the way we were raised or whatever. But also we deserve to see, to be happy in the end. So that's why.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you, ladies. So let's talk about tropes, right? What tropes do you find yourself returning to? And which do you try to subvert? How do you handle power dynamics, especially across race, class, gender, and sexual orientation in your relationships on the page?
I'm laughing to myself because the way that I did not intend to write 3-second chance romances.
Really?
No. I kind
Such
of
a wonderful job. I thought it was completely intentional.
No, not at all. I was probably in the middle of I think probably writing book 3 when I was like, oh my God, these are all second chance romances. And then I was like, I never want to do this again. So I think it's yeah, when we talk about tropes, when we talk about those things, I think there's those things that we kind of gravitate towards just naturally as readers and as storytellers, but it's always fun to kind of go back and realize the tropes that you put in there that you didn't even realize you put in there.
Got it. Okay, look, we learned a secret about Natalie's writing.
And I want to piggyback on that too, because I do love second chance. And I knew I wanted to debut with a second chance. Like when I decided to write, I was like, this is what I want to write first, right? But I never found myself writing so much miscommunication as I actually do.
Yes, you're doing great at that.
It's not like, I tell people all the time, I'm like, it's not miscommunication as the main trope. Like it's like the story does not develop because of miscommunication, but I think there is, because I write interracial and multicultural. I don't know if there's just like so much nuisance that happens between having two people that grew up in two different cultures, but I didn't realize how much miscommunication there was in all of my books until like my 4th book, when somebody was like, you love miscommunication. I was like, I don't. And then I was like, well, yeah. And forced proximity is my other miscommunication, and forced proximity forever and ever, apparently.
Yeah, I wanted to strangle some of your characters.
It's not me.
What about you,
It's
Lydia?
hard. It's hard talking to people. Communication is a hard thing.
I agree.
For me, I really love a forced marriage or marriage of convenience. And that's always fun in historicals. I have 2 of those. But right now I'm thinking, well, what if it happened in 2025? How would that look like? So I'm just playing around with some of those ideas. And forced proximity, Amber, I love it so much. My favorite thing is it starts storming, it starts raining, they can't go anywhere, they're trapped in a room together. What's gonna happen? I love it.
Anything could happen. What about you, Adriana?
My favorite trope will always be fated mates, which I don't typically write paranormal, although I left romance. Like I read a lot of romance as a teenager, and then I kind of left romance for a few years during my college years, and I came back to it like in my early 30s. And that was like in the middle of like the golden era of paranormals, like in the like kind of mid 2000s. And so like paranormal was my return to romance. And so I love Fated Mates, and that's why a lot of my book, at least my books that are, I write queer romance, and I feel like queer romance kind of is a little bit of like a different dynamic in terms of like how the beats happen. But if I'm writing MF, like pretty much like what happens is he sees her, his entire life starts falling apart instantly, and he's obsessed, and he can't do anything else but like make his entire life about her. So Fated Mates for sure is like
I love that.
my favorite thing to read,
We
and
all deserve a fated mate.
we all deserve someone obsessed with us.
Wait, but because I always make the joke, el hombre dominicano aficiado. Like it's either annoying or scary. But
But you see, we write aspirational, hombre dominicano
yes,
aficionado, which
yes,
is a different thing.
yes, because Amber has some billionaire Dominicans and Adriana has these Prince and and Lydia and yeah, I love it. I love it. Thank you.
Listen, you will pry Theo Ganas out of my cold dead hands. Let me tell you, there is that is just talk about instantly obsessed, simp to the extreme. That's pinnacle. It's pinnacle.
If it doesn't happen like that, someone body snatch me and is writing books with my name on.
Right.
Thank you, ladies. Okay, so for those of you who write historical romance, what research or challenges come with writing romance in another era? How do you make it resonate with modern reader? How does setting, whether in New York or Paris or anywhere in Europe or Dominican Republic, shape the feeling of romance?
I mean, I feel like historical is uh almost like a nicer canvas to write, because it's like people already expect the stakes to be high. Like, especially if it's like a female, like if the story centers around a woman, like people expect there to be high stakes in terms of her agency, of her, like the way she moves in the world, of her work, of her liberties, right? Like, I think it's like already an expectation. Like, historical already as a subgenre is a subgenre that technically has like bigger stakes. And so I think it almost lends itself better for like big stories. So that's one thing. And two, I think for me, and I think Lydia, who is actually a historian, I'm not, is like the piece of being able to uncover all this history that we don't even know about our own. I have like through the Leonas, which by the way, when I was starting to write the Leonas, Lydia was the person that got me in contact with the Dominican Studies Institute folks who were like key to me being able to write these books. But
You know about them?
I knew about them, but I needed like a contact, and Lydia very kindly put me in touch with the folks there, with the librarian, and it was literally like
They're very
the
helpful.
most important resource that I had writing that series. But in any case, like for me, like I have so many people, not just Dominican women, but Latinas being like, I had no idea like Mexico was in the Exposición Universal in Paris in 1889. And it's just like because we don't get to read about it, and we almost never get to read about ourselves in history in a way that's like fun and sexy and with happy endings. Like almost always when we're reading about our history, it's like in some context that it's either like really shrouded in trauma or not about us, right? It's about like whoever came there. So I think there's challenges, of course, because vernacular and like having to have accuracy in the research, like it does take a lot of work. But in terms of like being able to write a great story, I think to me it's like a really exciting subgenre to write in.
Nice. Thank you. What
So for
about you?
me, like as well as the research. So before I started writing romance, I was writing a lot of, for years, I was writing fantasy. And what I really loved about writing fantasy was the world building. So when I started writing my historical romances, I took a lot of that because as much as you research, you can never have a complete picture of what everything was like. So there's some things, some gaps that you have to bridge, some things that I make up because I like it. Some things that I will always opt for having something that the reader will find familiar. Like, for example, there's one book, well, I think in all of my books, the characters are always eating pastelitos. And I was like, oh, but I can't find like a recipe where I want to know if they make it, if they make pastelitos the same way we make them now, but I can't. So I said, you know what? They're just gonna, I don't know if they did, but I say that my people are gonna have pastelitos the way I like them with raisins. Um, so it's a lot of like trying to find the gaps where history, where you can't find every single detail and just filling them with things that the reader will identify with and that they'll like, I think.
Nice. Thank you. Thank you for sharing, ladies. Okay, so many of you use Spanglish or code switching in cultural idioms and slang in your dialogue. How do you decide what stays in and what gets translated or explained? With Amber, I noticed that she has these footnotes, or at the end of her book, she'll explain what the Spanish words mean, right? So how do you preserve the musicality and rhythm of Dominican Spanish or Latinx dialects in your writing without losing readers who might not share that language background?
And I can go first. I really, when I'm drafting, if it comes out in Spanish, it stays in Spanish. Like that is just, that's my rule of thumb. I'm like, if that came out that way, it came out that way. I do put the footnotes, especially if it's like Dominicanism, if we have something very Dominican. I'm like una pasola,
Yes,
just
for those of you who don't know, Dominicans, aside from our Spanish, we have our own dialect.
yes.
So
And
certain words that you won't hear anywhere else.
yes, and it's really interesting. It wasn't until I was writing my fourth book that I realized that I spelled que lo que with KLK
Yes,
without
girl.
actually
Yes, you did.
spelling it out until my fourth book. And I was like, well, it is what it is at this point. But my rule of thumb is if I write it, like if my character is in their inner monologue, or if they're just, speaking and it comes out, it stays. And if it's the character's POV who they don't speak Spanish, then I do not translate. Because if the character's POV, if they're lost, I want the reader lost too until they can figure out what's going on. But I'm always learning, always trying, different ways. But I don't make the Spanish, however you say that word, I don't know how to say it, italicize,
Yeah,
like
italicized.
that. Um, and stays there. I know, Angie, you have read my books, but I have a playlist in all of my books, and every chapter has a song. And if the song that inspired that chapter is a reggaeton, then the reggaeton stays. If the song that inspired the chapter is Gilberto Santa Rosa on a salsa, it stays. Like it just, it really depends. And that's kind of why I'm like, I don't know how I would write a character who is not like how I would write a romance that doesn't have a Dominican in it, because then I feel like my Dominican is just gonna come out. So I'm just,
For your next book, just remember me and include some bachata in it, okay?
oh, I have two bachata already, okay?
Who wants to answer this question next?
I'll go. So when I was first drafting, my debut series, that was a conversation that we were really having in the romance community. Like writing in another language, are we going to italicize it? Are we going to translate it for people? How are we going to go about that, right? And there's people who will like direct translate kind of afterwards, or there's people who will not. I'm somebody who I will not. I try to you know, have context clues for the people who can kind of pretty much figure out what that person said. But I'm not gonna directly translate for anybody because that's not who I'm
We
writing
don't get
for.
translation.
Exactly. I'm writing for us, right? I'm not, and I think I've gotten to a point where I'm just like, I'm not catering to people because they're gonna be mad either way. If you put it in italics, if you write it normal, if you direct translate it, if you whatever, they're always gonna be mad that it's too much Spanish, right? And so I tend to not do any of that, but when I'm drafting, yeah, it's like I'm about to say, well, however it came out is how it came out, right? And sometimes there's times where I do have to go back because I'm like, here's a paragraph of Spanish, and I'm like, wait a minute, that's too much. So then I might be like, oh, in Spanish they had this conversation, but those things, especially those things that give us our individuality and highlight our specific cultures, because we know that we're not a monolith, right? So those things, definitely keep those in Spanish. Why not? Right. And like I try to like make it somewhat like my Puerto Rican Spanish or, you know, my Dominican Spanish, and not go like super far, like with a que lo que, like just because I'm like, I don't know, maybe it's my teacher brain, but it's also one of those things where I also wanted to like swing into like our historical readers here. Like, we know everybody was reading the Highlanders, right? And they had their way of talking and writing it out, that you were kind of reading it and you were like, I'm not exactly sure what these Highlanders are saying. So I didn't want it to get like too technical in the dialect. But yeah, however it comes out with the characters is kind of how it's going to stay.
Thank you. Who else?
I mean, I think about it, and it's almost like you think about it, but you don't think about it. Like you write it, and then how it comes out. Like my last book, A Tropical Rebel Gets the Duke, they were both Latin. She was Dominican, Mexican, and he was Colombian. And so, or, you know, Colombian Scottish, but grew up in Colombia. So they spoke Spanish to each other, you know, and so, I mean, but I also have to think this is 1889, so I can't have like a lot of like the like contemporary vernacular that like Dominicans would speak in. But if there's something in Spanish, it's just in Spanish. And back in the day when I was writing my first book, like they would like the house style usually for a lot of traditional publishers was italics for anything that wasn't
Right.
English. And I remember having like that conversation with my editor, like, this is not natural to speech. People don't talk like that. And, you know, they were like, oh, I guess we've never thought about it because, you know, they hadn't had a lot of people that were writing books that were not writing just in English. So, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Adriana.
But also, like, if you can figure out how to Google and look up a word in French when you're reading whatever, you can do it for Spanish. Like, it's
We
the
all
same
learned
thing.
Gaelic to read Outlander, and
Right?
everybody was fine.
Right.
And I am gonna say too, my book that is, and sorry, Lydia, that I interrupted, but my book that is coming out next is set in the Dominican Republic, and there is like there's no stopping, there's no translation, there's no like they're having conversations, and so if she is not Latina and she is a little lost in some of the chapters, but again, like Natalie said, context clues, and kind of like at some point she even asked the guy, she's like, what did they say? And he's like, oh, this is, you know, but it also like depends a lot on that for me too.
Yeah, when I started writing, I thought about this a lot because I'm writing mostly books set in the Dominican Republic. They all are talking Spanish, so it didn't make sense for some of the dialogue to be in English and some of it to be in Spanish. But so I just made the executive decision of like, okay, it's mostly gonna go in English. I don't translate, you know, names of food and things like that. They're always eating pastelitos. They're never eating like a beef cake. I don't know. I wouldn't even know what to call them in English. But I So yeah, I decided that it was all going to go in English, because they're all speaking the same language consistently. But now that I wrote one book, here it is, set in New York, I did have a little bit of a chance to play around with that. And for most of my books, sadly, there's nobody saying que lo que. That's very sad, but because they're historicals, and I do have to keep like a sort of a consistently sort of like a not formal, but more of a maybe a less colloquial way of speaking. Um, I thought it would be sort of an easier entry for readers if I just kept things not so complicated for them.
Got it. All right. Thank you. So, what reader feedback has moved you most, right? Moments when someone said, "This is me," like I've never seen, it wasn't until I read Adriana that I saw queer romance um, in books, right? And I'm not a queer person, but it was something different, and I still enjoy the stories, right? I related to Amber's, stories, and Natalie's, and Lydia. There was always something there that I could relate to, right? So, how do you hope your romance stories would change how people see Latinx love stories, both inside the writing community and beyond it?
I can go. Um, so in my second book, the female main character has ADHD and a sensory processing disorder. And I had a reader reach out to me afterwards to tell me that she saw herself so much in her that she went and got like medical help, and she got diagnosed, and she's taking medicine now, and like it has changed her life. And I have it printed, and on the hard days, that is what I read. But just yesterday, a fellow author messaged me to tell me that she read my Christmas novella from last year, and Livy, she's Dominican, but she doesn't speak Spanish. She grew up in the United States. And even though her parents spoke Spanish, she always went to like daycare and then school, and she just didn't like speak it, right? So she like understands it, and she doesn't speak it, but she still feels very proud about her culture and her ethnicity and her family and her traditions. And she's like, I will never miss Nochebuena no matter what happens. And actually the whole plot is about her not missing Nochebuena. But this author friend messaged me yesterday to tell me that she has never seen a character who didn't speak Spanish and was still celebrating her culture on page, and she was very thankful for that. So like those are the things that keep me going, I guess. And definitely, I want one day my kids to see uh, couples in books that who look like their parents. And that's just what I want. I just want people to feel seen and connected with my messy characters.
You're doing a great job. Who's next?
You know what? In a much less serious topic, or I just had somebody read an arc of this book, and they messaged me to say, "Her mess is my mess." And I just burst out laughing, and I wanted to cry because I just told her, "Well, her mess is my mess." So I'm so happy you feel that way. And that's everything I could wish for.
Nice. What about you, Natalie?
Yeah, I've had, especially because I'm here, we talked about I'm in Milwaukee, right? And you were like, there's Dominicans there, there's Latinos there. So I think one of my favorite things is when I'm doing local events and I come across other Latinos, and they're like, oh my God, what? Like, tell me about your book. And then they come back, or at a different event, and they're really excited. But I think for me personally, the one that a message that really stood out was a reader who had recently lost her father, had listened to his favorite song with him before he passed, which was Vivir Mi Vida, Mark Anthony, which comes up in book 3. And she had just said, like, thank you so much for including that song, or like whatever, like that was my dad's favorite song, and it made me feel like close to him for that moment. And those, I think, for all of us are like those things where we're like, oh my God, we're actually like reaching people and helping them process or deal with things that otherwise they, we kind of try to not deal with because it's hard.
I agree. What about you, Adriana?
I assume that, like what we said before, a lot of us write these books because there was something missing for us in the romance that we were reading. And like I said before, I have been reading romance for many, many years. And the first queer romance with, two Dominican characters that I read was the book that I wrote. And so to me, like, I feel like for a lot of us, we are almost like feeding ourselves with our books, in a sense that there's things about, like, I mean, you can read, there's a lot of books with like messy women, but it's very different when you're reading a messy Dominican girl, because that kind of mess is very specific. And so like that being seen and feeling seen is why we wrote these books in the first place. So I think like getting that feedback from readers of, I read that and it just resonated because, I also moved to the States when I was like in my 20s, and whatever, like the way that I came out, or like my kind of like my awakening in terms of like my bisexuality, all of these things, I feel like when I hear readers say that something about the way I wrote it made them feel like they could see themselves, then that's the best thing.
We love that. We love that. So back to tropes, right? What are tropes or stories that you want to see in these Dominican and Latinx romance that you feel are underexplored? Please share if you're working on something next. I know Lydia has a book coming out soon. Are there themes or stories from your culture that you haven't tackled but you're planning to? Share all the secrets.
All right, I'll go because Adriana knows my secret.
I do.
I think, just in terms of tropes in general, I want to see all of them, right? There is no trope that has been sufficiently covered through the Dominican Latinx gaze. Every trope needs to be continuously covered. Let's just start there.
I'm here for it. Yeah.
But like for me, my next series is paranormal, again, because fated mates stick it straight in my veins every time. And and so I am hoping, right? I sold 2 books of my 4 ideas, so I'm hoping to be able to bring my other island, the Dominican Republic, into the equation. But yeah, fated mates. It's monster romance. It's everything that my paranormal heart ever wanted and didn't think I was going to be able to write, because when I told people that I wanted to do a Beauty and the Chupacabra, they looked at me like I was crazy.
Not me. No. Not me. When you texted me, I was like, yes, that's it.
Yeah. Like no, but like 10 years ago, I was like, come on, it'll be like Buffy, but it's the Chupacabra. And they're just like,
genius.
But now we're here, and we're at that part, and I'm so excited, to bring that out into the world and explore other paranormal things besides just, vampires and werewolves and Mothmen.
Beautiful. Okay. I was not expecting that. Okay. What about you, Amber? What's your next book?
So I have a Christmas novella coming out this year that is, I call it Idiots to Lovers, because these are 2 best friends that are so like afraid to tell each other they love each other that they're just like, protecting each other. It's set in the Dominican, it's set in Romana. it's like written and I'm really excited about it. But next year I have a Marriage in Trouble book coming out that I keep calling it the secret book, but it's not really like people keep saying like, oh, you're trying to go try it. I'm like, no, I will self-publish it. It's just not in Baker Oaks. So I want to finish Baker Oaks before I publish it. And that was really interesting to like explore. And it's dual timeline. And the past timelines, it's set in Santo Domingo. And she is a bougie Dominican and he is not a bougie American.
Is that the motorita?
He does ride a motoconcho, okay? He goes to her fancy ass house in a motoconcho. Is great.
I've been waiting for.
We love him. But Natalie, that you say that, the way that I want to write a duology with La Ciguapa and Una de las Americas, so freaking bad, but I am like terrified
Do it.
of writing anything that's not contemporary. I am so afraid, but it's like, I mean, I have a pitch written because I am obsessed.
Go for it. Do it. Do it. Adriana knows that in our text chain, I kept being like, like, I don't know if I can put this in there, or like this building was knocked down and blah, blah. They'd be like, what are you talking about? Girl, it's paranormal. Just do it. It's magic. And I'm
Make
like,
it up.
oh yeah. I'm like, oh yeah.
So
when
I slide into your DMs, just remind me to do it and I'll do it because I love the myths. And I'm just like, but I'm like, magical realism, I'll make one of them. It's just, yeah, and one day.
Yep, do it.
Wow, I'm looking forward to these. Lydia, you want to tell us about your new book that's coming up?
Well, first I need to ask you all to sign me up for arts, please, because I need to read those. I need them right now. The minute you said the word tropes, every single trope that ever existed went out of my head. So I have no idea what tropes are in my book, but I will tell you that it's about, and it's,
Thing,
I'm
right?
sorry?
Which tropes do you think are under, represented, I guess, in these books?
Oh, I cannot think of a single trope. They all went out of my head. I don't know what a trope is. I'm so sorry. But my next book is about an aspiring screenwriter who teams up with a cosplayer and a male model to create Regency themed thirst traps for social media.
Oh,
And
I love that.
It's a lot of fun. There's no chupacabras or ciguapas in it, sadly, but it was a lot of fun to write.
Wow. Okay. So exciting. And Adriana, we already know that you have this huge project that you're planning for.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. My dog is barking.
Yeah, my dog was
For
about
those who do not know, Adriana writes at the speed of light.
yes.
She's always got multiple projects going on.
No clue how she does it.
Oh wait, you're on mute, girl.
Sorry, my dog was barking. I have a Kickstarter that is going on right now. It's a Dystopians Romance Collection, and I have one story in it. It's a project I co-created with Allie Hazelwood, and we have another 6 authors in it. It's called After the End, and it's on Kickstarter right now. So you can go and see all the amazing stories that are in there, including amazing authors, Elizabeth Stephens, Nikki Payne, Nisha Sharma, Allie, myself, Kate C. Wells, Claire Kent, and the great Sherry Thomas, who I still cannot believe is doing a project with me. And everybody, whenever anyone asks me, it's like, how is it like talking to Sherry Thomas? I'm like, I don't know, because I black out every time that we have it. And then and later I have a holidays. I've been writing these like FFF Omegaverse, like super high heat holiday novellas. So I have one of those coming out early December that's called Naughty or Nice, Naughty with a K, and it's like basically just like very sexy polyamorous sapphic romance.
How do you find time, Adriana? Because you publish so many books during the year.
This year I've only published one. I've only published the historical that came out in February. But I always make time to write really sexy books. If they're like very porny, I make the time.
Right. When are we going to see an anthology of just Latinx romance authors?
Well, I
There
mean,
is
Adriana
one.
has
Amor
one.
Actually.
Amor
Amor
Actually.
Actually is a holiday.
What actually is all Latinas?
Mm-hmm.
That
Yes.
is the only one?
I don't. Maybe. And I mean that one is like all like the stories from Love Actually kind of like reimagined.
Mm-hmm.
But that is all of us are Latinas in it.
Okay, I want to see a Dominican one. Can we aim for that? Can we? There is a friend of mine actually who was inspired by Adriana's campaign, who decided to put together a Dominican romance anthology in DR. So it's all in Spanish. Yeah, I'm helping her with some things. So if you ladies are interested in contributing a story, I will send you the info because I would love for each of you to include something in there as, you know, internationally known, I would say, or getting there, Dominican and Latinx romance writers. So before we close out, you know, there's been a lot of conversation and controversy around romance genre lately. Kennedy Ryan is always in something. I mean, now they're trying to cancel her. I love Kennedy Ryan. You can never cancel her for me. But I always see these controversies around romance, right? Debates around authenticity and overused tropes and racism in the industry, how marginalized authors are treated and marketed. Where do you want to see this genre go next, especially for Latinx romance, right? What do you think needs to shift in the way that these stories are told or published or received, so that the romance that we're writing isn't just included but celebrated and respected for the depth and the power that it brings?
Well, I think the next step, you're kind of seeing the next step with what Adriana and Ali have pulled off, right? Like there is this antiquated system of publishing books that doesn't even really necessarily work for the mainstream stories anymore, but it definitely doesn't work for diverse stories. And so I think as they have proven that there's a desire for these stories, that there's a need for these stories, we're gonna have to get imaginative ourselves in terms of self-publishing, like Kickstarts, things like that. But publishing is also going to have to try to figure out how to keep up too, and realize it is not a one size fits all type process of marketing and promoting and distributing books, especially by ethnic and marginalized people. So I mean, you would hope that we would see some change, but honestly, with the way that things are in this country right now, specifically, I think, you know, focusing on our own stuff and our people, and being there for them and writing stories for them that are making us happy and are representing us the way that we want to be represented. I feel like right now that's all we can do. That's all we can really focus on.
Yeah, I mean, I've been thinking, last weekend, I went to the Bad Bunny. I went to Puerto Rico to see Bad Bunny. And something that I've been thinking a lot about, I mean, as we were coming up with the concept for this, for After the End, for the Kickstarter, like something that Ali and I thought a lot about was like, we want to invite people into the collection that we're like obsessed with their work, because we know that like there are going to be readers that are like obsessed with their work too. And like that, like coming from a place of like, we want to have writers in this collection that like we have a clear understanding of why we love their work and we can speak to it. And like, we know that they're going to deliver on what we are envisioning for this project. And like going to see Bad Bunny in Puerto Rico, like one of the things that struck me a lot is that Bad Bunny could have done a tour and come to the United States and sold out stadiums and it would have been amazing. But instead of doing that, he chose to like serve the audience that he knows is deeply, deeply deeply committed to like his fandom, his like true real fans. And I think right now, like romance has grown so much, like since the pandemic, so many people came to romance. There's so much romance right now that I think something that I've been thinking a lot about, and I think has served me well, even with this project, is instead of trying to capture this like mythological wide audience that we may never get, I think focusing and serving deeply the audience that like we are actually writing for is, I think, something that could serve us well, like as authors that are writing Latin people, presumably for Latin people. So I've been thinking a lot about that because I don't know, Bad Bunny's project in Puerto Rico has been obviously inspiring to everybody that speaks Spanish or even not, but like thinking about how he did it has been really something that I've been thinking a lot about. And I think, yeah.
Well, and even when we talked about, like you mentioned Kennedy Ryan, right? And like they're trying to cancel Kennedy Ryan, like as if anybody has that ability, right? But that's what she does, right? She has the following that she has because she's extremely talented, obviously, but she writes for her people, her readers that she knows are going to want to go on that journey with her and are going to support her and be there for her. So all of this other talk and all of this other, memes that want to come in and think that they're really kind of doing something, it doesn't matter because that core group is there and she's not trying to cater to anybody. She's just doing what she's doing.
She's catering to her readers. Yeah. Anyone else?
I would just say that ultimately as authors, that's the best practice, is to serve our readers and serve our community and continue to put in the work that all of you ladies are putting in. So
Thank you. Amber?
I mean, pretty much same. I'm still, newish. I'm still learning. I'm still, my mom says all the time, that the devil knows more because he's old, not because he's the devil. And I literally am just like, I am just learning as I go, and I am staying true to myself and my characters and being proud of the work that I'm putting out and the readers that my books are for will be there, even if it takes longer or whatever to find them, because remembering why I wanted to do this, like if I'm putting, other than falling in love with writing, right? Like if I'm pulling my family and my sleep through the cycles that I pull myself when I'm in this obsession over telling this story, if it's going to, if it's not going to be true to what like the dream and my heart is, then what's the point? Time thing. It definitely is really hard when you're chronically online as much as I am, which I'm trying my hardest to not be. It's not working out, but it's really hard to like quiet the noise. Like Natalie said, los memes, but really, every single day when I talk to my mom, she always reminds me, remember that the people who came before you have things to say. You watch and you learn, and you try. I try my best not to cause any harm and to tell the most realistic story, closest to my heart that I can be, and make the next one better.
Thank you, Amber. Okay, ladies, thank you for answering all my questions. I now want to open it up for the participants that are here to ask questions of these authors. So if you have any questions for them, please put it in the chat and I'll gladly read it to them. Is there something that you're curious about? Going once. Oh, it may
Yeah,
be.
also look in the did you look in the YouTube too to see if there's in the YouTube live chat, just in case.
Yeah, no one has questions there. Anya is so much pressure. Anya, I'm pretty sure you have questions.
While Anya is thinking on her question, I just saw Anya on Saturday and she brought me not one, but 2 pieces of homemade flan.
Oh,
And I don't know how to make flan, so I was like in heaven. But she also brought flan to my PAs, and that was like the sweetest thing.
beautiful. Aw, that's so nice. You see, that's how we treat each other in our community. Beautiful. Any Latinx books you've read recently that you have loved? That is a question by Odalis.
I have been doing a lot of research right now for my series, so I have not. I'm like woefully behind on my romance, but I have loved a couple different books. But where am I? Here, I found this book. It's all about fantasmas and fantasias and like little stories. And I mean, this is Puerto Rican Tales of the Dead, but also it's really fun to read to read other people's little monster stories from the Caribbean.
Nice. Anyone else? Any Latin authors?
Yeah, I just finished Streams and Schemes by
That was my pick.
Rebecca Kincaid. Fucking fabulous. Addicting, like, sorry, I just cussed. Addicting, so good. It's so good. 10 out of 10. Genius. I was like, and so hot. Incredible.
Filthy.
I love
Filthy.
What is
I
it again?
Streams and Schemes by Rebecca
She's
Kincaid. She's a cam
she's
girl.
she's Mexican, like Rebecca is Mexican
Oh yeah.
Filipino. And so the heroine in that book is Mexican.
Oh, it's a comedy.
I loved it. It's a trilogy and it's completed. But I don't read a lot with my eyeballs, but I just finished that with my eyeballs and it was fantastic. And I'm reading right now Another Sky by Cynthia Rodriguez, and it's like angsty, emotional, second chance, messy, like after my own heart. And I'm like, I just finished writing a Christmas novella and my life was like happy go lucky, and now I'm like, I want to be destroyed. So I picked this up and I'm really enjoying it.
Nice. Anoten, mi gente, anoten. Who else has a
Okay,
recommendation?
wait. I got one now. I am like, okay, so I'm usually not like a dark romance girl. Okay, like I usually it's not like my jam. Okay, but I have read The Dead Girls Club, right, by L.M. Ramirez. And it is just so like angry woman, just straight going ham on these dudes and them absolutely loving it, that I like I said, the serial killer thing is usually not mine, but in this instance, I'm like, yes, murder them all. So yes, that's one that I've read recently.
What about you, Lydia? You have a recommendation?
Oh, well, my brain is melted from copy edits. So right now I'm doing a combination of playing on Neopets. If there are any millennials in here, they'll know how addictive it is, and watching Acapulco on Apple TV. But I do have Liana de las Rosas, Gabriela and His Grace, which recently came out on my TVR. And as soon as my brain is back at like, right now it's 80% offline. As soon as I get it like working a little bit more, then I'm diving deep into that book.
Beautiful. All right. And Adriana, you mentioned, I think you said you share the same one as
Dreams
Amber.
and Schemes by Rebecca Kincaid. That series is phenomenal. All the heroines are cam girls, so it's like they're sex workers. The heroes have like really like very like one's a politician, one's like a high-powered lawyer. So there's a lot of conflict, and they are filthy. I mean, I love a very high heat book, and this is some of like the best erotic I've read in a long time. They are super fun and so funny. Another great one is Wanhabi Mari by Mia Sosa, which came out earlier in the summer. It's second chance. It's kind of like dual timeline because they've been friends since college, and she's getting married, so he needs to do something to get her back. So that one's really fun, and Mia Sosa is always hilarious.
Beautiful. Thank you for the questions, ladies. So the next question is, if you could say something to a queer Latina individual trying to navigate life in adulthood, what would you say?
Girl, we on the same struggle bus. That's what I say.
Yeah,
The
like,
struggle bus is struggle busing.
what do you say? Like, just stay, like, keep, like, try to stay in community. Like, that's the only thing I can tell you, is like, stick to your people and try to, like, keep each other safe.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Try to refill your well as much as you can.
Nice. Okay. And Andreina is asking, what song or songs would you use as the theme for the couple of your most recent books? So Amber has playlists. Adriana doesn't do playlists, right? Natalie, you mention music a lot. And Lydia, you don't do playlists.
I have playlists. I don't include them in the book, but I have playlists like in my Spotify that I listen to, and I mean, I can't even think of so because this was like paranormal, and so I tried to like go with my Spanish rock kind of vibes, and then I realized I don't know a lot of Spanish rock outside of like Mana and certain things like that.
Al Hadaki, you don't know Al Hadaki? This is Dominican rock band.
Yeah.
I just found out about, so like I just found them. But so the one song that kind of from the very beginning was like the first song I put on the playlist is El Gran Combo de Puerto Rico, Brujeria.
Oh,
Okay, all right.
Just because it's one of my favorites, and I just love how he says bruja, brujita.
What about you, Lydia and Adriana? You ladies don't usually have playlists, but if there's a song that you could pick for your last book, what would it be?
probably Tyrant by Beyonce from Cowboy Carter is probably the song that best matches Aurora and Apollo's relationship.
Okay.
So I don't usually have playlists because I tapped out of music sometime in like 2007, 2008. So I don't know anything about music, but the hero of my book actually has a tattoo that are song lyrics that say happy endings, they never bored me. Those are lyrics by a song called Fuck Forever by Baby Shambles, which is one of the songs that I really, really, really love. So I think that one, or if there's a song that he would dedicate to my heroine, it would probably be Quit Playing Games with My Heart by the Backstreet Boys.
Nice. Yeah, that's always a go-to. So another question by Barbara is, how do you decide when a character is fully developed and a story is complete?
My deadline tells me that. It's like, you can't mess with this anymore. It's due. You have to turn it in. Because otherwise, you can always go back and you're like, oh, I should have did this, or oh, I should have did that.
And as writers, you're never happy. You always think there's a room for perfection or correction. You always think this could have been better.
Yeah, when the deadline tells me it needs to be done is when it's done.
Yeah, I'm that kind of person who drives my editors crazy because I always want to keep going. And I'm that kind of person who has sadly asked after copy edits, can I just go back and add one little paragraph? And I promise you that that paragraph is going to change the entire chapter and it's going to be so much better. And I can never stop.
Oh, wow. Okay. Okay, ladies and gentlemen. Ladies, thank you so much for joining me tonight for this Brooklyn Book Festival Bookend conversation. I really appreciate you. I was so looking forward to this because I was like, oh my God, I read these ladies all the time. I could finally be in conversation with them. So I appreciate you all for being here, and those who made it to the Zoom as well. Thank you so much. Lydia, I'll see you on the 26th in DR for the Dominican Book Festival in DR, which is September 25th through October 5th. So for those of you who are here, I urge you all to please continue supporting our romance writers, our Latinx romance writers. Purchase their book, donate to their campaigns, review their books, please. We have so many incredible books out there. I tell you, I have 2 years reading romance.
Request them at the library.
At the library, request the art, be in community with the writers as well. Tell them how much you love their work. I'm sure they want to hear that as well. Okay, they're busy, but they'll appreciate you saying, I connected with this, or I love this, and thank you. Okay, so ladies, thank you so much for joining me. Have a good rest of your evening. And where do I end?
Thank you.
Thank you, Angie.
No, thank you all. Thank you so much. I'm looking
Thank
forward.
you so much, Angie.